Welcome to the Rockstar Principles Podcast, coming straight to you from Rock and Roll, USA, covering the latest and greatest in educational leadership trends, news, and awesomeness for principals all over the world. Now, here are your hosts, the boss, John Ross, and the Doctor of Proctors, Nick Indeglio.
All right, welcome back to the Rockstar Principles Podcast. This is Nick and John together again. John's back from vacation, and we have a very special episode today. We're going to be talking about professional development. And what better way to talk about professional development than to bring in an expert on professional development. Here in the Downingtown Area School District, with both some of the highest PSSA scores in the state, the #1 school for school performance profile, yada, 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 we go out and get the best. And our guest today is the Supervisor of Professional Development. That's her official title, but she basically is in charge of our PD for the district. Her name is Jen Saksa. You can find her on Twitter at JSaksa, I believe.
It's actually at Prof Dev.
Oh, yeah. At Prof Dev. PROFDEV.
Underscore DEV.
I was way off. Let's try that again. At Prof Dev, PROF underscore DEV.
Oh.
It's just Prof Dev.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I do believe you still have an egg avatar. We haven't changed your avatar yet.
I haven't found a picture I like.
Yeah,
we'll have to work on that.
Okay, all right. Now I promise.
Jen has a storied past in professional development, and she is a former principal, which makes her all the more awesome. And she used to work with John Ross back in his Upper Darby days. So we truly have an expert, and that's why we are going to be talking to her today about professional development and about the future of what professional development should become and what it shouldn't become. I mean, great topics, right, John?
Absolutely.
So why don't we start off letting Jen tell us a little bit about why she left the principalship and jumped into a professional development role, because that had to be a tough choice.
It was a tough choice, and thank you both to our Rockstar principals for having me on. I appreciate all those accolades, Nick. And it was a tough decision to move from being a principal to a full-time professional developer. But I think what led me to that is the love of learning and seeing the impact when you actually spend the time working on how to improve that you can have on students. And the day-to-day interaction with students is certainly something I miss, but getting to work with teachers on finding the best solutions for improving their teaching in a continuous way is also the exciting part of my new job.
You've been in the role for 2 years now?
Yep, this just finished my second year.
And I think one of the things that would be important to touch on prior to really jumping in and getting philosophical is in Downingtown, you're working with 16 different buildings, over 1,000 professional staff, and 32 or so total supervisors, principals, etc.
You got it.
When you entered into the role, was that overwhelming for you? Was that a challenge you embraced? There's so many different audiences you have to play to with this big of an organization, and there's only one of you. So what were your feelings walking into that?
Yeah, the scale of it is overwhelming. The nice thing is that the principles of professional development and the research on what works really works no matter what the size of your organization is, but it certainly is a lot to coordinate, to manage, and really the biggest challenge is differentiating for all of those groups, especially as our world becomes more personalized. It's really about helping people build capacity so they can pursue their own professional development in the areas that are relevant, that will be relatable, and are still moving toward a goal that we can all accomplish at a district level.
It seems overwhelming, for sure.
So overwhelming that she had her Twitter handle wrong.
No.
Yeah. I knew I was right.
You were right.
It's at DASD_Prof Dev.
Oh, I did.
So, yeah, I knew there was a DASD.
You knew there was DASD. That's because Shawn helped me set it up, so
right.
He knows better.
At DASD_PROFDEV.
And you didn't force her to have a get rid of the egg avatar right away?
No, I didn't. I mentioned it and let it go at that. I thought by now she might have picked up on it, but that's okay. She's going to need one now because she's going to pick up a bunch of followers after after being on the podcast.
She definitely will.
Now that we have the right Twitter handle.
That's very important to make sure that and we'll have that in writing as well with the show notes and everything.
Excellent.
Just one more question as we're building to really getting deep in the philosophy of professional development. John and I both love to, when we get going on the podcast, we talk a lot of theory, and we always try to tie it to pragmatics as well. But you mentioned already basically adult learning theory and what the research shows, which is we always try to tie it back to evidence-based learning, that can actually help the audience, help the listeners. So clearly you've had a passion for that. How did that develop? Where did that come from?
I think it actually came from my first year as a teacher. I somehow got invited to attend a workshop. And that workshop was so hands-on. I had so many practical ideas that I actually was able to turn around and use. And I thought to myself, wow, everybody should be going to these things. And I should share it with the people who are teaching next to me. And so I did that. And I think the appeal is that you never lose your inner teacher. It's all about teaching, and it's just your audience is different. And when I got to actually study the theory behind it, it all just made so much sense. And truthfully, it wasn't necessarily what I had experienced in professional development. So I saw the opportunity to try and shift things in the direction of what really actually seems to work.
Now, John, having worked with Jen prior to that, and I know you had mentioned that in your prior building, when Jen was with you, she was basically in charge of the professional development.
Among other things, yeah.
Not just that, of course. Again, so, right before we delve into the tough questions and the deep philosophy, what do you want to contribute in terms of what you've seen Jen do? Not just in the role here, but in the role before.
Well, I think that one of the best things that Jen has going for her in her situation is that, unlike a lot of people, she's had experience at every level. She was a teacher at high school, she was an assistant principal at middle school, and she's been a principal at elementary school. So she's really able to see from that lens. She's able to identify with teachers at all levels. She's able to identify with administrators at all levels. We talk a lot about how, as middle school principals, we could never do the job of an elementary principal because it was just, we'd never be able to be alone and not have an assistant and dealing with wiping noses and giving hugs and everything. And at the high school, we'd never, I would never, you were at the high school, but I would have a real tough time being at the high school level. But I think it takes somebody with a certain skill set to be able to be not only at all three of those levels, but be successful at all three of those levels. And I think that's probably, I would say, has helped you with being in this position, in that you can not only speak to your experience at those levels, but even prior to that, you can identify with what people are going through from that lens.
Yeah, and recognize the differences and the difference in the needs at the different levels, and also at different, having worked with so many different people at all the developmental stages, and that sounds like a kid term, but a career development stages. What does a new teacher need versus a teacher who has 15 years experience, or the teacher that has 30 years experience. There are all of our needs, just like our kids' needs, are so different, and you're not necessarily going to hit every need every time, but there needs to be an acknowledgement of those differences and a way to address them, or the structure so that you can address them yourself.
So as not only someone who's been at the building level, but now in your position, just of all time, top one or two favorite educational leaders, like big name nationwide people, who are the people that you really you'll use their material, they'll be go-to, there'll be people whose research or writing or whatever, excluding present company, of course.
Of course, I try to refer to my experiences with these two fine principals whenever possible. I have to say, one of my favorites to read is Michael Fullan. He does a lot of work on change, particularly change in education, but that is the job. I mean, professional development is about change, which can be one of the hardest things for people to do.
Probably the hardest.
It is.
I mean, really.
It is, and there are stages of change, and often we expect people to change, and at the first signs that something has happened, we then drop it and don't continue to support that change or have the follow-up that's necessary. And Fullan writes about creating the circumstances and the culture that really supports that change and improvement, and acknowledges that guess what? There's going to be another change then, because that's what improvement is. So I really think that his work, as well as his work with Andy Hargreaves, is pivotal to the philosophy or the approach to the professional development. And then I like who everybody else likes. I like McTighe and Stiggins on assessment. I like to
UBD.
Yeah, right. I mean, I like to follow Rick Wormelli. He's great. Todd Whitaker. I mean, every year. I think
I was waiting for it.
You have to, right? I reread his books almost every year, looking for things that might be helpful to principals and teachers.
So let's get into the meat of it now, and be real honest about the educational environment. Professional development hasn't changed much in the past 30 years. As much as we want to say it has or think that it hasn't. It's still, for a large degree, one-stop shopping. You get the one training and there's not really any follow-up. A captive audience, there's not a whole lot of choice in what that professional development looks like. There's not a whole lot of differentiation, as you were talking about. And there's still a whole lot of do as I say, not as I do. The talking at you, the putting up a PowerPoint and going through the slides. So, in your opinion, how do you see the current state of professional development, and where do you think it needs to go as we move deeper and deeper into the 21st century?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a matter of really looking at what works, and it's also a matter of looking how we're changing globally as a society. So right now, we're seeing a lot of people still experience that workshop model that you described. The nice thing is people are beginning to shift to professional learning communities or something like that, where it's really more about a group of teachers taking the work that they do every day, analyzing, determining, using common assessments, what's working, what's not working, and then having discussions and doing research around new instructional practice to address those issues. And if that's done regularly, and if it's done in an environment of collaboration and collegiality, it has been very successful, especially if you can align it with something like job-embedded coaching. That's one of the things that research is finding more effective than certainly than the workshop model and a lot of other things. And that's because you learn a new concept and then you're not thrown to the wolves to decide whether or not you try it or if you can remember it. You learn a new concept, someone may come in and model it for you. You may say, hey, will you come watch me do it? You get some feedback on it. And it's a teacher to a teacher. It's someone with expertise not only in the new technique, but also in teaching at your level. So I like to see that come through. So there's the mentoring aspect where you still are looking to others to learn what you need to learn, and you're still looking for feedback. But there's also this, as you know, the whole world of social media. So how can I pursue professionalized learning with a professional learning network? How do I determine my own goals and then be given the time and the resources to pursue them? How do I collaborate with others in a less top-down way? I don't know if you've heard of ed camps, where...
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Twitter has opened our world.
There you go. And we've had some very successful ed camps right here in the Philadelphia area. And, this idea that everybody could walk in the morning with some idea of what they want to learn about and then walk out that day and have learned it. And then also the opportunity to have real conversations with other practitioners. That's another place we need to move. We need to go away from butts in seats and go toward mastery of skills and techniques as evidenced by an increase in student achievement.
So evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, mastery and evidence. And it, of course, goes back to our whole Dan Pink model of motivation in the 21st century is autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
There it is.
Which you can't measure unless you're doing those things.
Exactly.
All right, so let's build on the, you brought up the ed camps, and at some point, John and I both probably figured that was going to become part of the conversation. We've seen smaller districts do it very easily. There's one elementary school, there's one junior high maybe, and then you get a high school. So you're bringing together, 3 staffs, they all have the same times for professional development, a much smaller community, let's say. Now let's talk Downingtown. You've got 16 schools, 12,000 students, over 1,000 teachers. How do you bring an ed camp model to a professional development calendar that there's no common times really. You get a couple days here and there, but not much. How do you make that work? Can you make it work?
Well, I think you can. I think you start small, as with anything else, and that may be with a very focused area. So if we're going to do an ed camp, we're going to do it about technology integration or something. We're not going to necessarily go without any theme at all. And then maybe we do have common days that we have here in this district where all teachers are free to do what they want on that day, whether it's finish up with their grades or whether it's pursue a different professional development. It might be a chance to just offer it on a day like that, see who comes, use their input to refine the model. It really seems to be working on a grander scale over the summer. If you don't have the time together, offer them over the summer, offer them on those work and collaboration days, offer them on days off, or do smaller periods of time. So an ed camp after school or an ed camp as an early dismissal Wednesday, which we have where students leave early and we pursue professional development. But you definitely need to do it in a focused way. I like the idea that you start with volunteers and you let it grow as it should, as opposed to forcing it, as we may do with other things in this profession, or have things forced on us, you know.
All right, let's jump to that question. And I'm kind of dominating the questions, John.
It's okay. I asked a couple.
Cut me off.
Chime in.
Cut me off wherever
I've been
you
on
want.
vacation for a week, so I'm trying to get back into the swing.
With all of that being said, and knowing the vision of where you would want it to go, and where I think most of the educators who are connected and really passionate want things to go.
Yeah.
When you look at what's happening, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the country today, with the implementation of Common Core, a much more rigorous teacher evaluation model, looking to base it on data and value-added growth. The demands, and John and I have said this a number of times, the demands year after year keep growing and growing and growing, which pulls time away from district initiatives that they might want to do. How do you see the current climate, and how would you suggest or how do you think about trying to balance out those two things?
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenge we all face as leaders, because again and again we hear stories that teachers aren't doing well enough, or we have a new worldwide test that was put out or results that were shared and the students didn't score as well as people think they should have. And so we have to have a balance of acknowledging what is real and needs to be addressed in there, and also, picking out what maybe doesn't pertain to what's actually happening. So we're faced with this sort of morale issue here in education. Listen, there are some things you just have to learn. You have a new evaluation system, you have to learn it. And sometimes that means you have to sit there and watch a video and then try it yourself and see what questions come from it. It's just like when you're teaching a class. It was not as much fun to teach grammar for me as it was to teach Romeo and Juliet. They're two different things. So you need to have a place, almost like a blended model, a place where you have some direct instruction, but never ever let that be the initiative from the state or the nation. Never let that be the only thing. It's always about how you can implement it in your class, bring it down to the student. We like to have, we say to people, put in a meeting or in a professional development, there's an empty chair. Pick a student, put that student in the chair, and every time we learn something new, think about how does that affect this student, whatever Susie or whatever the student's name is. What am I doing for Susie? And really it needs to be brought down to that level, no matter how global the initiative.
All right, John, ease your way back in. Go ahead, jump in.
Well, I'm just kind of expanding on that a little bit and just thinking about the whole idea of climate and professional development regarding that, and I don't know if it's so much as a question as just agreeing, and from the frustration end about how important climate is, but how out of our hands we feel about it in terms of being a principal, because there's in order for a school to have a positive quote-unquote climate, that means everybody's happy, for lack of a better term, I guess, right? Everybody feels supported.
Yeah, that's part of it,
Everybody feels supported, everybody's happy to come to work and everything. And the frustrating part of that for me is that's different for everybody. What makes me feel supported is different than what makes you feel supported. What makes me happy to come to work every day is different than what makes you happy. So in order to try to get a positive school climate where everybody, I've said several times, I mean, I've worked in a couple of different schools, but as a teacher and administrator, and I don't ever remember there being everybody saying, wow, we've got a great climate here in this school. You know what I mean? Like, because the people that are happy are just happy. They
have great
go about
climate
their
no matter
job. They're it's the people that aren't happy that are like, oh, morale is really low, the climate's really bad, and it's because that particular person may not be happy with the way things are going, and I don't know that there's anything that can be done about that. I guess that's the frustrating part.
And we've talked about this a million times, and let me just set the background, because I know you've seen the Shawn Achor video on happiness, the TEDx talk, where he basically,
the best.
All of that research says that happiness is determined first, that external success isn't what will determine your happiness. It's exactly the opposite of that. You choose to be happy, and then you will experience, whether it's success or failure, but you're still going to have a positive attitude and happiness there. You're choosing that. But we know in our world that there are teachers, custodians, cafeteria workers, students who embrace that mindset, and we know that there's ones who don't. And Shawn even gives his new book actually basically teaches you how to build that. How can you be happy? How do you first be happy before the other piece? But we're working in an environment where we know you're going to have disgruntlement regardless, just like you said. So how do we address that? I mean, no matter what professional development you're offering, you could offer the magic pill of professional development. This will make all students 100% successful, and it's proven. And yet that same population that's never happy or disgruntled is still going to be unhappy. How do you build the groundswell? How do you reach the tipping point?
Well, there are change theories out there, including Michael Fullan's, that beliefs change after behavior changes. So it's not that you're going to change anyone's mind by talking to them about it. You just have to do it, and then your belief changes about it. So I think it is important that we not only nurture those who embrace and go after and look for the happiness and look for the ability or the opportunity to improve, but we also create a structure and organization that will help people see the change, because they sort of have to do it anyway. And then hopefully, if the change is worthwhile, then they're going to also see the benefits of it. It's not going to change a habit of mind necessarily, but when you're aware of things like this and you spend time talking to people about it, it's all about relationships, right? You're talking to people about it, that's the only place you can go. It's not global, it's one person at a time, I guess. Yeah.
Right. I'm at a loss.
I'm curious for you guys. I would love to hear. I know you have had such a variety of learning experiences. I'm interested in hearing, for you guys, what was your best professional development experience? Accepting any that you might have had that
Just
maybe I organized or led, because I want to take myself out of the running, of course.
Hands down, the best one outside of Todd Whitaker, which obviously jumps to the front for me. Todd Whitaker, right up there with him is Anita Archer, and the stuff, and hers is very traditional, old school. She stands up there and uses an overhead, and she has a lot of interactive stuff that she did, but just the way that it just makes so much sense how she talks about how kids learn, and her whole thing is about finding ways to reach kids and student engagement and reading in that way, and she's phenomenal. We had her come out when we were in Upper Darby. We had her come out to our school. We were lucky that we were involved in something with the state through RTII, that she was going to different sites. So in our school was one of the sites she came to, and that was the first time I've met her. And then I've since seen her a couple times at different IU state stuff. I've seen her a couple more times. And it's like one of those things where, just like with Todd Whitaker, I could hear him say the same thing over and over again, and every time I hear it, I hear something new. I hear a different tweak, a different way of looking at it, and it helps me apply it to a different thing I'm going through at the time. So, yeah, Anita Archer is fantastic.
And didn't she follow up? Did she model teaching in classrooms
She
as
did.
well?
When she came to Drexel Hill Middle School when I was there, that was what was so great about her, was that she walked the walk.
Yeah.
That she came in and she actually taught the kids the way that she was telling teachers how to teach the kids. And it was, again, she was high engagement with the kids when she was teaching and showing teachers how you could teach something as basic as, I remember she did a health lesson on like the dangers of smoking, which you would think is just like a layup and you just show the kids statistics. And it was just so interactive and the kids were just so interested and involved. But she came and actually taught some of our students lessons during the day, and then she did a post meeting after each one where she kind of took feedback but explained to people what she was doing.
And that plays into adult learning theory, or andragogy, Malcolm Knowles, where adults learn from scenarios. That's one of the principles there. So here's the scenario of her as teacher, and that it's in the reflection. It's actually group reflection, not just individual and self-reflection. In the reflection with others on that scenario, that's where the learning happens for adults. So you can see why teachers may have felt like that was a valuable experience.
And the funny thing about that is I think that was like '09.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I had ever seen anybody do that, right? Since then, our new math program does it, the language arts program. So now I think the curriculum, the people that are creating curriculum are somehow, I'm not saying she invented it, I'm just saying she was the first person that I saw doing it. And now I'm seeing it happen more and more where, we just started that Singapore math last year where they came in and were actually teaching the lessons for the teachers.
I'd go with slightly different type of professional developer who does more research. It was way back when I was in Upper Merion and I was doing the unique hybrid role. Half of my job was supervising special ed and the other half was figuring out how to improve our high school PSSA scores. And I went with our assistant superintendent and one of our other professional developers to Wissahickon High School, and we watched a keynote by Doug Reeves. And I became a fan that day and I've been a fan ever since. But essentially, it was the first time. And of course, it's grown since then with many others. But I was looking for a magic pill to improve student achievement, and there still isn't a lot of good research out there on how to do that. And here was Doug Reeves who said, you know what, this is what I do. It's objective. It's not subjective. And he launched into basically what is this 90-90-90 research. Which to this day, whether or not some of those schools you can actually validate it or not validate it, it makes perfect sense. So for me, that was the launch into not just this wishy-washy theory of, hey, here's the latest, greatest idea. I have nothing to back it up, but I'm going to go out and we're all going to do it. This was hardcore data that with proven results. And he basically got up there and said, why are we studying the highest performing, highest economic status schools? Why aren't we studying the lowest socioeconomic status schools with the most difficult, lower performing demographics who have high achievement? And then that's where the genesis of his studies came from. And that just shifted the whole thing on my head for me. And since then, that's kind of, for me, when I walk into a professional development, I want to know that it's more than just theory. Show me what's backing that up.
It's really working. And it's interesting, he's hitting on that experience, it sounds like, hits on some of the other principles in andragogy. And one of that is it has to solve a problem. This is how adults function. They want to solve the problem. And you also refer to the data and the setting of the problem, but it also has to challenge assumptions.
Yes.
So that's the reflection I talked about. So you have an assumption going in that we're looking in all the right places, but this brings up a different idea of where we should look. And so now that assumption has been challenged. The learning is there.
Yeah, exactly.
We got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to ask? We want to ask Jen who her favorite superhero is, or favorite?
We do need one of our.
We need a pop culture question,
yeah.
Right?
Let's go.
We go movies or.
Let's. I'm trying to think. What would be most interesting to our audience?
Your favorite, since we're same generation more or less, your favorite John Hughes movie.
It was going to be my favorite all-time movie as well, so it just happens to be narrowed down then. 16 Candles, of course, yes.
It's a classic.
Really?
Yes. Oh, yeah, 100. Yeah. Well, and then, of course, not John Hughes, but Vacation. That was another one.
That's
yeah.
actually.
I think he wrote that.
He did?
Believe it or not.
Maybe
I
it is a John
he directed
Hughes.
it, but I think he was involved in that movie somehow.
That man was
I'm pretty
a
sure. I'm
genius.
gonna have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure he wrote that. I'm pretty sure he wrote it. Yeah.
Let's build on that question. So let's take that a step further now. Now, because we're going to stay with movies.
Yeah.
You have there's two. Part one. Who
By
is?
the way, hold on. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Before I forget this, Jake Ryan
Yeah?
is related to one of my teachers.
Stop it.
Michael Schofling, the guy that played Jake Ryan, is related to one of the teachers in our school.
Now, I am very happily married, but if there's any way that you could
He's a
arrange
carpenter now.
a meeting.
He's not acting anymore.
All right, okay.
But he,
We'll take it.
yeah. She said she sees him at family gatherings occasionally,
That's
and
hysterical.
so I'll give you the hookup if
All right.
you're interested.
I like
yeah.
it.
That's going to be a celebrity-like marriage if that dissolves that quickly. Okay, so here's your two: movie or TV.
Okay.
Can't be literature. Has to be movie or TV. One, your favorite on-screen representation of a principal. Your favorite. Two, the worst stereotyped principal who just gives a bad name to the profession from movie or TV. So the best and the worst, basically.
Well, the one that came to mind that's probably the worst, but is also maybe the funniest, is obviously the principal in Ferris Bueller. Okay.
Absolutely.
But also the worst.
Edward R. Rooney, which by the way was my Halloween costume last year. I have to show you. There are
Great, I have to
pictures.
see
Yeah.
that. Also the worst is the guy in the Breakfast Club.
Oh my God, yeah.
Well, I can't remember his name.
With the bald.
But you want one more? He's giving out attention to
Show
Judd
Dick some
Nelson.
respect.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Werner.
Yes.
Richard Werner.
I mean, honestly, this is a sad state of affairs. I can't think of a good one. So I think this is then the time for me to plug my reality TV show idea, which is to have a bunch of teachers live in a house, figure out their lesson plans together. It doesn't sound exciting, but maybe there's some sort of elimination round. I don't know. And then see how things work in the real world of schools.
Oh,
and
wow.
Maybe we could include a principal in that.
Would the principals be the ones voting him off the island? Or would they vote
Principals
themselves?
are the ones that vote him.
No. Maybe they put, yeah. I haven't worked that part out.
Morgan Freeman and Lean on Me is the only positive. That's the
there
only
we go.
positive one.
Yeah.
I can think of.
Because John and I have talked about this at length on the podcast before. One that popped into my mind that I hadn't thought of before, and I know the show wasn't great, but the principal from Boston Public, very famous
I
actor.
never saw that show.
He was of course, every character in those shows in the early 2000s were flawed. You had to have. You couldn't just be a good person. You had to have flaws. But I think at least they were trying to have him be. To showcase that principals are good leaders, you know what I mean? Like because he was a strong, not always right, but he was a strong leader at least. So that I was trying to think of some positive ones aside from Morgan Freeman.
It's tough. Not many to pick from.
No, they don't do us.
No, they do not.
Well, they haven't done one about you guys yet. We'll wait for that one.
That won't be
Rockstar
positive.
principals.
That'll be a comedy.
Who would
for
play
sure.
Nick and John?
That's next week's podcast.
That's what we're gonna do. A whole separate topic.
I vote for Bradley Cooper to play me. Just saying.
I could see Bradley Cooper. Is he tall enough?
Sure.
I'd
Bradley
make an
Cooper can
exception.
do anything.
Is he tall enough to play me? You're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never met.
No,
Bradley
he's
Cooper.
shorter than me, but I'd make an exception. I think I'd be okay with that.
I would like either The Rock or Stone Cold to play me.
I think you would have to have Steve Carell dressed as Gru from Despicable Me. Wasn't that the?
Yeah, but I just want to be cooler. I'd like to be
I get Bradley Cooper. You get Steve
I get
Carell.
Steve Carell. Jesus.
Dressed as Gru.
Right. Well, no, there's a joke behind that.
all right.
One of my former guidance counselors, on a bus trip to Washington, D.C. with the 8th graders, they were watching Despicable Me on the bus, and about halfway through the movie, she just blurts out, "Wait a minute, Gru is just like Nick."
Oh my!
So
then you never live something like that down. Yes.
That was my Halloween costume. That was Gru. Well, Jen,
All right, thanks, Jen.
appreciate you having on the show, and anytime you want to come back or hang out with the Rockstar
we're
principals.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, she's been clamoring to get on here. I'm sure.
Well, this really was
Highlight.
fun. So thanks for having me. More power to the teachers out there. They are the professionals, and
And we're asking you to
continually
follow.
improving.
We want you to follow Jen on Twitter.
John, what's that Twitter?
Hit her up with ideas for her avatar.
There we
At
go.
DASD_. profdev, PROFDEV.
And we'll do this too. How about this, John? On Twitter, hit us hashtag RSP Jam Sessions. That's our hashtag, and give us ideas for Jen's egg avatar change. So we'll
Something good for professional development.
maybe we'll pick a winner, and that can be our choice.
Maybe
That
it
would be
could be
awesome.
maybe it could be Jake Ryan from 16 Candles with like
That'd
a
be
heart
good.
around it.
In school, no, learning.
Little heart behind his head.
You can learn from that. It's a great idea. All right, take us home, John.
Thanks. We'll be right back with more of the Rockstar Principles podcast.
Thanks for helping RSP top the charts in the Edu podcast world. Keep it real with Twisted Steel and School Appeal.